A 700-kilometre, highly militarised barrier snakes along the hillsides. Palestinian workers funnel through checkpoints, and Christian pilgrims fill churches. This is a city you've probably heard of. Depending on where you're from, it might have even featured in your school nativity play. Bethlehem, the birthplace of Jesus Christ, an ancient, holy city, now suffocating under an occupation.
The minute it was built, it was disturbing. But unfortunately, the more you live around it, you stop seeing it. You get used to it, and that's the sad part.
In the neighborhood, even they kill kids in our neighborhood. Palestinians, until it's like over 5 years old, they had to experience all of that because of the war.
Bethlehem was my next stop on my cycle journey through the occupied Palestinian territory of the West Bank. A year before the Israel-Gaza war began, I was cycling through Israel and occupied Palestine, documenting the reality on the ground as I went. After almost 1,000 kilometres of pedalling, I was preparing to leave Jerusalem and cross the so-called Green Line, heading back into Palestinian-controlled territory again.
All right, Bethlehem, making progress. And now, this is it. Now we're in. So this was just past the Green Line. I'm now in Palestinian territory again. So I'm back in Palestine, and Assalamu alaikum. So I guess these are Christmas decorations.
In stark contrast with the looming wall and watchtowers, things in Bethlehem were actually feeling kind of festive. The Christmas lights here are thanks to the city's large Christian minority, and more on that shortly. Since it's a pilgrimage destination and its economy is largely dependent on tourism, people here are pretty used to outsiders. So, as with so many other places I cycled through in the West Bank, the atmosphere was warm and welcoming.
$1 million.
$1 million? Let me get my...
That's expensive. Welcome.
Shukran, thank you. Bye.
I'd been in touch with a local family before I'd arrived, and they'd sent their nephew over from a nearby village to show me around.
Hey man, how you doing?
So, what's your name?
Jehad.
And Jehad's showing me around, it's called Desha, right?
Desha. Also my village, Qatar.
Yeah.
Jehad was a bit of a pro at cycling with no hands.
That's crazy. Yeah. Is there a goat up there?
Yeah. So they just don't have to, make the whole area back in their backyard. So,
Yeah.
Or maybe they don't have storage. So.
Okay, got you.
After talking to Jehad for a while though, it was clear that a childhood under an occupation forces you to grow up fast.
Like in the neighborhood, even they kill kids in our neighborhood. Also, one of my friends' cousins passed away from the war attack. Israel attacked with the jeeps. Like I may expect, man. Also, they killed one of kids in our school.
So you're 13, right?
12.
12. You're 12.
Yeah, 12.
So 12 years old, and you have like it's normal for you to see
Attacks and all that.
attacks and all that.
Because since I was like 6 years old, it started happening a lot.
When you say that, like, so for you it's normal.
Yeah.
Do you see that that's like
Dangerous.
that's a strange, like for someone like me to come here
Yeah.
and hear someone say that, for like a 12-year-old to say that,
Yeah,
is
it's
quite
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we've been like our whole lives like when you Palestinian turns like over 5 years old, you had to experience all of that.
Yeah.
Because the war. Kids like in our country use weapons because they're trying to defend their like neighborhood in the country.
He tells me not just about attacks from Israeli forces, but also about a conflict that had broken out between two neighbouring villages in the area.
The Hussein scared us off because every kid Hussein and Amra have guns. Israel attacked us, made us against each other, against ourselves, like a village against a village.
At his age, he'd already spent time thinking about solutions to a conflict he was born into.
If Australia didn't exist, all these people wouldn't have home.
Yeah.
It'd be so hard to have a home for them.
Yeah.
If Palestine didn't exist, all these 5 million people would be dead.
Yeah.
So that's why I had to be two together.
To hear a 12-year-old explain his thoughts about war and militant groups was a jarring reminder of where we really were.
See these mountains up here? The mountains. You see villages? These were the most attacks. This is like my neighbor over there.
Oh, so this is where Israel attacks
neighbors,
the most.
The most, because we're like, see the wall? That's the edge between
Oh,
Israel,
yeah,
Betir, and us. See the wall? Yeah, exactly.
So
These ones.
These
right
flags are Fatah,
Fateh.
and what's the other one?
Jihad Islami وجبهة
And Jehad.
وحماس.
Okay, got you.
So these ones are like teams of people trying to save the country.
Yeah.
In reality, these groups are very different. Hamas is both a political party and a militant group. Its militant wing led the October 7th terror attack in Israel in 2023, and until then its political wing governed the Gaza Strip. It's considered extremist and designated as a terrorist organisation by the US, UK, EU and others, but many Palestinians see it as the only effective resistance group against Israeli occupation. The PIJ is a smaller militant group, also designated as a terrorist organisation. Both have strong ties to Iran. Hamas and the PIJ are based in the Gaza Strip, not the West Bank, but they do have some active cells here. Fatah is secular and nationalist. Today, it leads the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank and supports a two-state solution, an Israeli state alongside a Palestinian one. It's internationally recognised as the political representative of the Palestinian people. While it doesn't officially have an armed wing, armed groups like the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigades are aligned with Fatah and have carried out attacks before. The PFLP is a secular, far-left faction with an armed wing. It rejects Israel's existence and supports the creation of a single democratic state for Palestinians and Israelis. It's been in decline since its strongest backer, the Soviet Union, collapsed.
If I was them, it would be all of us one together. And actually, so far, the most people are with the Hamas, the Jihad Islami, because they just must have the most weapon and the most people died from them. So because they live in Gaza, because this team from Gaza and also from Bethlehem and all that. Yeah. Every day, every week, somebody dies from them.
Now, before we go further, when I produce these videos, knowing where my information comes from is essential. The media can be used by governments and corporations to shape public opinion. And if you're not careful, you can end up being drip-fed stories that serve their interests rather than keeping you informed. That's why I use ground news. While researching my West Bank videos, I kept seeing reports about moves in Israeli parliament to annex this territory. Ground news helped me cut through the noise, compare coverage, and see how widely this story was being reported. With their headline comparison feature, you can see that if you read about this on more right-leaning and pro-Israel platforms, it might be framed as a Judea and Samaria sovereignty bill. That wording itself is a way to highlight Israel's connection and claims to this land. On left-leaning and more pro-Palestine platforms, the headlines use words like occupation and annexation, emphasizing that this would violate international law. Ground News shows which outlets are covering a topic, their political leanings, and who owns them. Their blind spot feature also shows you stories reported by only one side of the political spectrum. So if you want to better understand where your news is coming from and get yourself out of your echo chamber, subscribe to Ground News using my link in the description for 40% off the Vantage plan. You'll also be supporting this channel. And with that, back to the video, where Jehad was showing me around his hometown.
This way or this way?
Your bike can handle a bit dirt, right?
A little, but not loads. Shall I have a go?
Jehad took me through his neighbourhood to the outskirts of the town, where some of his friends were breaking in a new horse.
This guy's great. Actually, he's a world champion of horses.
Really?
تعال صور.
امشي.
Oh, beautiful, man.
That's all.
That's pretty cool.
It's only in moments like these that the occupation feels miles away.
Goodbye, Jehad.
Bye, man.
It's great to meet you.
Be careful with the streets and all that.
So you
Just
said-
be safe, man.
Be safe.
That's all.
You said I shouldn't really stop in Data.
Like, not really. Want to drink water, eat something like quickly, but like just like keep going because maybe attack something.
Okay.
After parting ways with Jehad, I headed back to Bethlehem's Old Town, where the historical and religious significance of this city is the most visible. Bethlehem is home to almost 30,000 Palestinians. It's a Muslim-majority city, but home to a large Christian minority. At least 3,400 years old, it is a holy city for all of the Abrahamic religions. In Judaism, this is where King David is believed to have been born. It's from his lineage that Jews believe their Messiah will arise. It's also home to the burial site of Rachel, a Jewish matriarch. For Christians, it's said to be the birthplace of Jesus Christ, their Messiah. In Islam, it's holy for the same reasons as in Christianity, except Muslims view Jesus as a prophet, not the Messiah. So this is a pilgrimage destination for millions of people every year, particularly Christians. But although Bethlehem is ancient, its identity has changed dramatically in the last 80 years. Currently in the West Bank, around 2% of the 3 million Palestinians who live here are Christian. In Bethlehem, that number is around 11%, a sizable minority. But in 1950, 86% of Bethlehem's residents were Christians. It's been a steady decline since then. And you don't have to look far to figure out why exactly this is happening. Now, there is some discrimination and tension between some Muslims and Christians in occupied Palestine, which may contribute to emigration. There's also the fact that Palestinian Christians tend to have lower birth rates than their Muslim neighbours. But it's largely economic factors that are cited in Palestinian Christians' decisions to move abroad. And researchers and Christian leaders here have pointed to the Israeli occupation as the root of the economic pressures that drive them away. A former reverend from East Jerusalem wrote in an article, "As any Palestinian, Christian or Muslim will tell you, it is the Israeli occupation that is making life unbearable for Muslims and Christians alike." Back in 2006, a survey found that 80% of Christians from Bethlehem blamed the occupation for their decision to leave. Since the October 7th Hamas attack and the genocide in Gaza, the Israeli restrictions on the West Bank have only intensified, and the future for Palestinian Christians, as well as Palestinians as a whole, is uncertain.
You might have heard that Christmas celebrations are cancelled this year in Bethlehem. It's impossible for us to celebrate while our people in Gaza are being bombed. Christians are leaving because they don't have a sense of hope. They want to seek a better opportunity.
Christians have been really fearing that this will cause an existential threat to their presence in the Holy Land.
I'm currently walking along the West Bank wall, which is the wall that Israel built to separate Israel and Palestine. The wall was declared illegal by the United Nations, but the ruling that they issued was not binding. It was an advisory ruling in a court case. So the Israeli government weren't legally required to take it down. And though this is built to separate Israel and Palestine, it's actually built beyond the Green Line in Palestinian land. So on the other side of this, there should be more Palestinian cities and towns, but now it's mostly Israeli settlements.
In 2002, during the height of the Second Intifada, a Palestinian uprising against Israel, construction on this barrier began. Israel justified it as a way to reduce attacks against Israelis. But for Palestinians, this wall represents apartheid, and is also part of a land grab by Israel, since it effectively carved off more territory from the West Bank.
For you living here, how does it feel when you see that every day?
You know, the sad part is that the minute it was built, it was disturbing. But unfortunately, the more you live around it, you stop seeing it. You get used to it, and that's the sad part. That, for example, I remember when I was a child, we used to go with our car to Jerusalem. That now is a very far away dream. While for a child, for example, my son is 5 years old, for him, he doesn't know anything else. You know, I was born in the 80s, so for my generation, we still remember going to Jerusalem. While for the generation of my father, for example, of my parents, it's like they know all the roads inside, or used to, before the geography was changed. So for each generation's perception of our geography changes with time. And yes, now I can say I don't see the wall unless I need to show it to tourists. It disturbs me, of course. But you can't live every day being disturbed, just like you can't be disturbed by seeing soldiers every day, or by being asked where you're going and asked your ID, or by having to leave your vehicle at a parking to cross to another, or having to renew your permit, or, you know, it's just a reality we got, how do you say it? You know, we got trained.
It's like you've had to normalize it, otherwise.
Yeah. Otherwise you go crazy.
Yeah.
You go crazy. I mean, it's not easy seeing a lot of things, and if you want to be very sensitive to details, then you can't live here. You can't.
I made my way along the wall towards checkpoint 300, considered the worst checkpoint in the West Bank.
This is the area where I'm walking now. So this is where people cross the border to Israeli-controlled territory.
It can take up to 3 hours to cross this checkpoint, so queues start forming here as early as 3 a.m.
So if I was to cross into Israel, I would head up this way now. This way leads to the security gate that goes into Israel. This is the entrance here. This is the pedestrian border crossing that goes back from Palestine to Israel. So if you want to go this way, you have to go through these gates here, and then there are security checks and more gates up that way. Salam. So these guys are going to Israel now. And lots of people who live here in Palestine might have jobs across the border if they've got permits to work and travel there. And some of them also study in Jerusalem and stuff. So they have to do this every day and go through loads and loads of security. Palestinians require a permit to travel across the border here, which costs about 20 euros per day. They can be denied entry to Israel for any reason, even if they have the permit. It's just a reality that people here have to deal with. And about 15,000 people will go back and forth across that border for work and study every day.
The Israeli permit regime in the West Bank heavily restricts Palestinian freedom of movement. And the price of a permit can fetch over $500 per month. A 2017 study found that the system cost Palestinian workers a quarter to a third of their monthly salary. Much of this money goes to brokers, or middlemen, who help Palestinians obtain the correct permits. As I mentioned in my previous episode about the settlers, permit access serves as an effective method of Israeli control over the Palestinian population.
A lot of people who have to cross the border regularly are not willing to go on the record in an interview or be on camera to speak to me about the situation here, like anything to do with the conflict or the occupation. And that's because they're worried that if they do speak out and they say something against Israel or against the Israeli military, that next time they apply to renew their permit to go across the border, or just next time they get to the border, they'll be denied entry, and for a lot of people that would mean losing their jobs.
On my way back from checkpoint 300, I asked in a local cafe if I could film from their rooftop. They told me if I did, I could be shot by a sniper. I couldn't tell how serious they were, but either way, it spoke volumes. So I remained at ground level. Down here, the wall is coated in street art. Even the likes of Banksy have left their mark here. Some of the artwork depicts people killed by Israeli forces. The Palestinian American journalist Shireen Abu Akleh. At 51 years old, she was shot and killed, likely by an Israeli sniper, while wearing a clearly marked blue press vest. Another Palestinian journalist was also shot and injured. Israeli forces stormed her home, and then her funeral, reportedly arresting 2 people carrying Palestinian flags.
Israeli police have attacked mourners and pallbearers at the funeral of the Palestinian American journalist Shireen Abu Akleh in Jerusalem.
They destroyed her memorial and have been seen tearing down posters with her image on them. Nobody has been held accountable for any of this. Another face displayed is that of Ayad Halak, an autistic Palestinian man shot and killed by police in East Jerusalem on his way to a special needs school in 2020. He was unarmed.
Investigators told the family of an autistic Palestinian man from East Jerusalem, Ayad Halak, who was shot dead by Israeli police 6 weeks ago, that security cameras in Jerusalem's Old City were not recording at the time of the shooting.
The officer who shot him was acquitted. These are further examples of the impunity with which Israeli forces have been able to operate. And it's worth remembering, too, that these deaths came before Israel's most extreme government in history came to power. The current Israeli Minister for National Security, the extremist and fascist Itamar Ben-Gvir, wants to reduce accountability for Israeli security forces even further, and is pushing to make soldiers and police officers immune from prosecution and loosen open fire rules. This wall and the Israeli settlements around the city suffocate Bethlehem. For a city so dependent on tourism, that's one of the key sectors that takes a hit. For many of the tourists who visit, after flying into an Israeli airport, they stay on the Israeli side of the wall. They arrive on Israeli buses owned by Israeli tour operators. If they stay at all, they stay at approved hotels and leave back for the Israeli side of the wall shortly after, leaving behind little to stimulate the local economy.
So these are the big tour buses that we were talking about, where they just go to their kind of approved hotels and they're here for a night and then they're out.
To add to the economic hardship, since the October 7th Hamas terror attack and the genocide in Gaza, tourist numbers have collapsed. Israel also banned almost all Palestinian workers from entering from the occupied territories. Though crossing is tedious, immensely frustrating, and sometimes dangerous, for many Palestinians, their livelihoods depended on it. All of this means Palestinians in Bethlehem and the occupied Palestinian territories more broadly are facing economic catastrophe. But back in 2022, when I was visiting, even with the occupation hanging over Bethlehem, regular life here didn't stop. Today, the 26th of November, was the date that Bethlehem officially kicks off its Christmas celebrations. This marching band's opening piece for the big day, Bella Ciao, an Italian anti-fascist anthem. Marching bands funneled through Bethlehem streets, accompanied by church clergymen who travelled from far and wide to be here. The procession headed to a Christmas fair in the centre of town. To mark the occasion, a service was taking place in the nearby church. This chapel, where the service was taking place, is part of the Church of the Nativity compound, home to the spot where Jesus is said to have been born. A site that brings crowds of pilgrims to Bethlehem. Outside, highlighting Bethlehem's demographics, the Islamic call to prayer echoed over the Christmas market.
Hello, post-production me again, with a reminder that you can support this channel on Patreon at the link in the description if you want to, and get access to ad-free videos and other perks depending on which tier you sign up for. So a massive thank you to anyone who does sign up, but either way, whether you do or don't, thank you for watching, and with that, back to the video.
Now back to Nadia. In Bethlehem's Old Town, you'll find Dar al-Majus, the Fair Trade Bazaar. The mission of this bazaar is to support Palestinian businesses, empower local Palestinians, and preserve Palestinian heritage. It's through this organisation that I got in touch with Nadia in the first place.
The idea of the Fair Trade Bazaar is to support women initiatives in Bethlehem and institutions that work with mentally and physically disabled people to create marketing and job opportunities for these people, be it through our social services and job orientation center at Dar al-Majus, or the Fair Trade Bazaar, where we try to work with them on their product development, on selling their products and promoting them from the heart of Bethlehem. The two big, let's say, sectors that we are very famous for are the olive wood, which is very specific of Bethlehem mainly, that is taken from our ancestors. So we learn it from our grandfathers and then we stay working in it. The other craft is the embroidery. Embroidery is actually a very symbolic thing for the Palestinian culture because our traditional dress is embroidered. And the idea was that women back then did not know how to write and read. And we used to write our stories, where we are from, who I am, if I'm a widow, if I am divorced, if I'm married, if I'm from this area, if my area has this type of plants. Everything was encoded in the chest of the dress. So basically, if you go to each area in Palestine, each of us has their own colors, their own patterns, their own techniques that vary from one area to the other. These patterns and prints that are used in embroidery or in the kufiya show how Palestinians used to kind of historically document our existence and document our story through textiles.
For all this to work, the initiative has to delicately navigate a very conservative culture.
So you sort of have to have a bit of balance with the conservative values, as well as,
Of course, we live in a society where our cultures, our tradition plays a role in everything. Contrary to what is portrayed of us in the media, in an Arab society, women are privileged in some things, but are also restricted in others. Okay, and in many families it is seen as, let's say, the role of the man to be the breadwinner. So the minute you as a man are obliged to send your wife to work, it's like a disgrace. That's one view.
Yeah.
And there's also the other view where the minute women become economically independent, That's like empowering women and giving them a weapon, sort of. So some societies or some sections of our society are afraid of this. So it depends. Each story, like each person has their own story. Okay, so we can't like generalize, but there's many aspects to this.
You can find out more and purchase locally made products through the Fair Trade Bazaar website. Before I headed off, Nadia left me with some final thoughts about Palestinian identity.
To be Palestinian is very, very special. Sometimes you feel like it's a challenge from God. You live in a country where there's a lot of obstacles. You feel, I can't move. I'm in an open air prison where I'm restricted with my movement. But it's also a very beautiful thing because you are in a very rich culture, in a very welcoming and beautiful society. We are very blessed to have like a mixture of religions, a mixture of people. We are the holy place of the birth of Jesus, which is also like very special. You feel like you get to meet a lot of people who come to visit this place because it's so special. Some of the people think we are like kind of like unique because we are like holy in some way. So being Palestinian is challenging, but it's also poetically beautiful.
My time in Bethlehem, one of the most important cities in Christianity, sitting in the shadow of the West Bank wall, came to a close, and I packed up the bike to move on once again.
Oh. Yeah, I'm gonna go.
I set off for the final and most intense stage of my journey through occupied Palestine. Hebron and Jericho were next. A big thank you to my patrons and YouTube members. Thank you so much for supporting this channel and helping to keep the stories coming.